Greetings, listeners. Welcome to theyoungfolks.com. This is going to be edition one of a new podcast segment that we're going to be doing called Marvel Mondays. Since Allison and Evan have started doing DC podcasts about Arrow and The Flash, I have decided it would be interesting for us to also tackle Marvel. Not necessarily the television, because that's not my area of expertise outside of Daredevil, but talking about the movies, since it is now I believe it is now the highest grossing franchise, which is
Nine billion.
pretty surprising. But also there is 12 movies now. Holy crap! I just realized that as of now. So this is Matt Macadro, and I'm here with a special guest. This is my friend Sean Nasuti.
Hello.
Now I asked Sean to come on because he's a huge Marvel fan, and I feel like he'd be the best person to help me along on this thing.
I do want to point out though that I'm not that big of a comic book reader, so I'm more of just a fan of the movies.
Okay, that's actually a good perspective because I'm a comic book guy, and it's nice to have someone who's not necessarily a comic book guy who just watches the movies and gets all of his information from that. Although to be fair, that's what a lot of people seem to do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the big Marvel players aren't part of the universe yet, like soon to be Spider-Man, but X-Men, a lot of the big ones are not necessarily owned by Marvel.
Nope. They're owned by other people who are not as successful with them.
To be fair, X-Men,
X-Men is the only one I can think of right now.
and that's one of those things I'm actually fine with that being its own universe because I feel that it's so expansive from a character standpoint to where you can justify it being its own separate entity.
Yeah.
And also in the MCU, I don't think it would make much sense considering they would judge one group of superpowered people but worship others. It just
Yes, especially because they've introduced the Inhumans, who are basically the MCU's mutants. So
Yeah.
that would make sense that'd be hard to bring the X-Men and just be like, oh, are they part of the same group? Are they different?
exactly. And if you guys have any questions about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'll leave Sean's Twitter information at the end because he watches it every week.
I mean, I know you just said we won't talk about TV shows, but I can cover briefly if you need to one time. Just let me know.
Yeah, if you ever want a guest piece or anything, just hit me up. I'll let you know. So I do believe we have someone writing about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check.
Okay.
So let's go right into this. After the Avengers Phase 1, because that's Marvel's new strategy, has been doing their films in quote-unquote phases, which I think is a smart way from a business standpoint and as far as a writing standpoint. So with Phase 2, Marvel announced this whole new lineup. We were going to get sequels to previously seen characters, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. We did not get a Hulk sequel because I believe Kevin Feige said there were some rights issues, but also he is a character that works better with ensemble films. Because I think Universal still owns the rights to a solo Hulk movie. Do you know anything about that?
I think when they first announced Phase 2, Universal was still owning Hulk, the rights to Hulk, because they were the ones who licensed the Incredible Hulk from Phase 1. So I'm not sure if they have the rights back yet. I think they do just because, the Avengers and stuff, but who knows?
So the film that kicked off the Phase 2 was certainly a big way to do it. It was Iron Man 3. From a logical standpoint, I thought this was, when I looked at the slate, this was the one that made the most sense because Iron Man started the MCU, and it did make sense to have it kick off the second phase. Unfortunately, Jon Favreau did not return to direct due to some I can't remember his exact reasoning, but there was some troubled stuff on Iron Man 2, and he was also working on a couple of other movies. But they did get a very inspired choice to direct the movie, and that was Shane Black, who is really one of the best writers working in Hollywood. For those of you who don't know, he worked on Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, and the only movie he had directed up to this point was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which if you've not seen that movie, I highly recommend it.
It happens to star Robert Downey Jr.
And that was the movie that actually Jon Favreau showed to the executives and said, this is who I want for Iron Man. So Favreau knows his stuff. But Shane Black came on to direct, and the movie was a huge critical success and commercial success. It grossed over $1 billion. It wasn't quite on the level of the Avengers as far as a financial standpoint, but out of all the solo movies, I believe it still is the highest grossing one.
Yes, it is. And then actually, when I go back on what you said about critical reception, like it did pretty decently with critics, but this, I think you might agree with me, Matt, is kind of. I think this is the most severely underappreciated entry in the series, particularly with fans, because this fans are either like, I like it, don't like it, or get it away.
Yeah, it was certainly one of those movies where I couldn't find a lot of people with middle ground. It was either you really loved it or you really hated it.
Yeah,
Of course, I should point out right now, if you're listening, full spoilers ahead. Go watch these movies; they're worth your time. But don't be mad at us if we spoil anything, because I don't think there's a person on this planet who doesn't know what is so controversial about Iron Man 3. So let's just get it out of the way. Turns out the Mandarin that we saw in the trailers was not the Mandarin that we actually got. Turns out Ben Kingsley's character was an actor who was hired by Guy Pearce's character in order to create this whole makeshift terrorist identity for profit. There's more to it, but I think a lot of people were just really taken aback by that, myself included.
at first, if I'm right.
At first, I've actually I'd say this is the Marvel movie, excuse me, that I've grown to appreciate the most. It's not my favorite of the whole MCU. Actually, it might be. I have to rank them again, but I think out of all the Phase 2 films, it might be my favorite. But I'll open this up to you first. Where do you stand on Iron Man 3?
Well, first off, like you, like when that twist happened, that first element, I was like, "What? Come on, it just did that." But then I just literally a few minutes later, I was like, "Actually, this kind of works." But I'll get into that a little bit later. This, believe it or not, this is actually my favorite Iron Man movie because first off, I was like to say, I think because obviously a lot of people like to say like, "Oh, these Marvel movies, they're all the same." Like Iron Man 3 and some of the other films that are going to come up later on this list. So like is a film that kind of defies its usual expectations of a superhero film. Like it's set at Christmas. Tony Stark's not in an Iron Man suit that much. It has a big twist, of course. Like, and yeah, so you gotta really give this film credit for great not being like you just your average three sequel to the first two Iron Man films. Of course, I also say this probably brings out Robert Downey Jr.'s best performance in the role of Tony Stark because, of course, at the end of the Avengers, he was the one who basically saved the world by bringing up the missile to destroy his Chitauri ship. But of course, since he nearly died, now he's suffering from PTSD, and now of course he realizes, oh wait, I'm not like the most one guy in the universe anymore. Which, of course, if you remember the end of the first film, he's like, Dick Fury was like, "You think you're the only hero in the world? You're part of a bigger world, Mr. Stark. You just don't know it yet."
That is very true. I was actually I would agree that it is the best of Robert Downey Jr. in the sense that as someone who reads the comics, Downey's Iron Man is not off the page per se. He's a great Iron Man, but he's not a direct adaptation. But I think this is the one that comes the closest to creating that perfect balance of the asshole Tony Stark, where he can just be smug and condescending and brash. Because if you look at the way he treats the kid that he comes across, he treats that kid like crap. But at the end, he does something nice for him, and it's like, okay, he does have a heart. He's not this soulless, evil businessman.
Yeah, because one of the things with Iron Man 2 was that, admittedly, that one he came off a bit more like an asshole in that one, to be honest.
Mm. And also, what I liked was that this did not just feel like Iron Man 2. I think it's okay, but it does feel too much like we're just going to tease the Avengers and we have to kill time before that happens.
Yeah.
So I think but I like Iron Man 3 if you discount the Chitauri stuff where he has PTSD, it is a standalone movie.
Yeah, which brings up an argument that I'm kind of annoyed at hearing, because especially after the Avengers, when you bring all of them together now and then you separate them with Iron Man 3, a lot of people are like, why weren't the other Avengers around? I'm just like, shut up. Because here's my thing about these kind of movies. It's great to have all the big Avengers movies, but then you need something like this, a solo superhero film, to ease things after like a super big film like that. Like this year, for example, we had an Avengers film start off the year, but then after that, we got a solo superhero film to lighten the mood after all that big stuff we got in Age of Ultron.
Definitely, and also, it's the argument that you could say with the comics. There weren't always team ups. It's like you look at the Avengers comics, there are over 300 members, but that's why solo issues are still as successful as they've ever been. And you can apply this to any sort of team up. Everyone goes their separate ways. Everyone has their own stories, and I think they took full advantage of it. Uh, as far as none of the Avengers showing up in this movie, I was totally okay with it. I would just there's going to be a film we get to a little bit later where I would think they could have worked in another Avenger, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
I have to say the reason why I think I would agree with you actually. I do think it is the strongest of the Iron Man films for 3 reasons. The first one is Robert Downey Jr. I would say the second one is that it's the first true science fiction Iron Man movie.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
It plays very much with science is very much the big theme. It does help that they're adapting Extremis, which is one of the more popular Iron Man stories, although it's a very loose adaptation. And third, I know a lot of people are going to hate me for this. I think Killian is the best of the Iron Man villains.
I'd actually have to agree with you there.
You know, I love Jeff Bridges, but I think Guy Pearce, what Guy Pearce is able to do is that he plays the slimy businessman that I've been waiting to see, but one that you could actually believe as a threat and one that you legitimately find scary in certain ways.
Yep.
I was a little thrown at first when they made him pretty much Jim Carrey's Riddler, but I like the way they worked it into the story in a good way.
Like the first time you see him, he has all the crazy hair, and Tony Stark just blows him off. And yes, this film is basically Incredibles. Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is a good way to put it. But also, one thing that I hear a lot, one of the big complaints is that, oh, he got pissed. His whole plan is because Tony Stark skipped a meeting with him. You have to listen to him closely because he says something along the lines of, you know, I waited for 20 minutes, then I looked outside, I realized I was completely anonymous. And I used that to my advantage because he gives this whole speech about how anonymity is what got me to where I am. It's why I'm successful. The Mandarin, if you give people a face, you hand people a target. And everyone, he can kind of take everything from the side. And also the fact that he's using disabled veterans who are disenfranchised war veterans, which is the first, I think it's the best of the Iron Man films as far as dealing with political military themes. Because the first one, they touch on military contracts and terrorism, but they don't go as far as they do in this one. But I think it works without beating you over the head.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about you needed a face for the Mandarin, that's why I really like the twist in the with the whole reveal that, oh, Ben Kingsley is actually this guy named Travis Slattery, the Toast of Croydon. Anyway, but by comparison, I'm going to compare with another infamous twist, but this one is not a good twist. This was the change that in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, that Galactus was a cloud. I mean, I get that you can't really do big purple man in space, but there's no reason for him to be a cloud. He's just a cloud. That's just stupid. But again, with this, they actually give you the set what it would make sense for this to be this whole big reveal is oh wait, this is not the main villain. The other guy's the main villain.
It's also the first. I'm trying to think about it. It may be the first of the MCU films where they did a good job with having multiple villains. In a way, I know he's not the Slattery's just a tool, but the way they set it up, and also he's got his henchman working for him. I forget the actor's name.
Seven.
Yeah,
James Badgedale.
Yeah, so he's got
might be my favorite henchman actually of the whole MCU. I might argue.
Yeah, he's
actually
got that Bond henchman feel about him. And the third reason I was going to say why I think it's the best is that from an action standpoint, I think the action in this can stand toe-to-toe with something like the Avengers.
Yeah, this really definitely does have some great action sequences, like the attack on Tony's house, and probably my favorite though is that the one where he's saving all the hostesses from Air Force One as it's crashing.
And also the climax, I thought it was really inventive how it's not a copy of the previous films where it's one guy in a suit versus another guy in a suit, where he has to keep running from costume to costume, and it's on this big oil rig. And there are points where him and Rhodey pretty much turn into Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon.
I do also want to add that Don Cheadle was much better here than in the second film. Like maybe they did give him more to do this time around.
Yeah, I think he's in it. He's in it much more, and they they also touch on. You were talking about how people complain about the other Avengers not showing up. Rhodey pretty much tells him, I deal with stuff like this. You guys aren't needed. This is why I'm here. So I think that's another feather in that argument.
Yep.
Speaking of characters, though, who get more to do, Pepper gets a lot more to do in this than she did in 2.
Yep.
Including she takes out the big bad guy at the end, which I know a lot of people have problems with. But I thought, here's the thing: she's put up with a lot of crap for 3 movies, and Tony's taken out the last 3 bad guys, and he was as much her villain as he was Tony's.
Yep.
So I was totally fine with it.
Me too.
What?
For the exact same reason.
Yeah. It was kind of like. It was kind of like Bane in Dark Knight Rises, where he's already been defeated at that point. It's like Jason Voorhees getting up for one last shot. So, I thought it worked. And I think the movie as a whole works really well as far as concluding a trilogy where it's all about him learning. Tony Stark being Iron Man is what makes Iron Man cool. It's not the other way around.
Indeed.
And for being the funniest, I'd say the funniest of the Iron Man movies, it's also the darkest. Like that whole scene where they blow up his house, and just everything with the AIM interview tapes. I think that was pretty well done.
Like there's also like the scene where the fake Mandarin, holds the president as ransom. Like if he doesn't answer the phone, he'll shoot the guy, and then he answers the phone, he shoots the guy. But I'm confused. Was the guy actually shot or was he not? Because the film kind of implied that he didn't.
I would say he did kill him, but he wasn't aware because he was talking about it was a prop gun, effects. So I think he was just so oblivious to everything that I would think that they did actually kill him.
And I'm okay when anyone says I love Trevor Slattery, but I panicked, but then I handled it.
And he also made a monologue about fortune cookies that sound threatening.
Yep, they're actually American.
Although the trailer did warn us when he goes, "You'll never see me coming." So
we should actually follow that.
They warned us. And also you got great appearances by like William Sadler as the president, Miguel Ferrer from RoboCop, and of course, anytime Miguel Ferrer is in a movie, he turns out to be the bad guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you have any criticisms of the movie?
Not sure. This is something that maybe this is something that I covered when you and I, as part of our group, the feature presentation, did a review of this. Like, some kinds with these movies, you do get some characters who are kind of underused despite being rather big names. And this film, that was Rebecca Hall as Maya Hansen. She kind of flip flops, and it's never really clear, and she's just killed off just like that.
That's a good point. That was going to be my point.
Aside from that,
what were you going to say?
I was saying, aside from that, that's all I got, really.
Yeah, I think that's the big one. I mean, one of my big problems with Phase 2, for the most part, is that aside from Black Widow, I don't feel like the female characters were as properly written. As far as new female characters, I mean.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
But she was good. It's not like I had a problem with the performance. It was just...
Yeah, not with her. It was just more the character. Just one of those characters, like, you have a lot of characters, and someone's going to get the short end of the stick.
Yeah. So that was going to be it's not a criticism per se. It's more of a plot decision where Tony gives the Mandarin his address, but he doesn't put up any kind of defense or... I'm wondering if they were trying to make it clear that he has some kind of a death wish.
Come on, I further the terrorist. I kind of viewed that. I see what everyone's coming from, but I kind of viewed it as like, because this is after Happy gets injured. Maybe he's just a little angry. He's like, he wasn't thinking straight. But again, not really a smart move there.
It turned into like a wrestling promo where he's like, I'm going to give you my address. Come and get me if you want.
Yep.
So, I guess in closing, I do think it's the best of the Iron Man films, and I thought it was a great way to open Phase 2.
Yeah, I agree. best of the Iron Man series, and I think also I'd argue the most underrated Marvel film, at least just from the fact that obviously this one did not attract us a lot of positive attention solely just because of that twist, which actually worked.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020 in that way. So
yeah.
So the next film was a sequel to Thor. It's called Thor: The Dark World, which was directed by Alan Taylor, who was not really known for films. He did a lot of television work on stuff like Game of Thrones.
Primarily Game of Thrones, and I was trying to think what else he did.
He's mostly it's been television work.
Yeah.
And then after this, he did.
Game of Thrones.
He also did Terminator Genesis, but I thought he was an inspired choice to do the movie because he's handled fantasy in some way. But unfortunately, it was a movie where I believe it was parts of it were rewritten. Originally, Loki was not going to be in it.
Yeah, I will say this: Thor: Dark World. Even though I still like it, it's the weakest of not only Phase 2. Actually, it is just the weakest of Phase 2. I was almost going to say weakest of the entire series, but I'm not going that far. I still think Iron Man 2 is the weakest, but it's pretty close.
I'd say it's the weakest for reasons that we'll go in more depth on. But so yeah, originally the whole thing was rewritten, but it came out in November of 2013. I think this was not the first time they put out two movies in the same year, because they did it with Thor and Captain America, and then Iron Man and Hulk.
This was the first time a Marvel movie was released not in the summer. This was November.
That's a good point. So the movie itself, what worked in the first one, I think carries over here, in that Hemsworth and Hiddleston are great. All the new actors, all the returning actors do decent work. I'm just not a fan with the way a lot of them were written. I think the biggest problem with the movie is the villain.
The villain. Yeah, unfortunately. Because going back to what you said earlier, like Loki was not going to be in it too much, but of course, because in the Avengers he was like the big everyone loved him. There was like more Loki, please, which means more Loki, less villain.
And it was frustrating because you get an actor like Christopher Eccleston, who's really good in these kind of parts, and he has no personality. His motivations are as generic as can be, and he's subtitled through most of the movie, so a lot of his words don't hold as much weight as they would if he was speaking English.
Yeah, like I defend some of the other MCU villains, like who are similar, like they don't have much like motivations or kind of not that strong personality, just because at least they kind of show it. But with Eccleston, unfortunately, he did not get that chance. He's just like, I am just an evil elf guy who's trying to take over the world. Blah.
So another problem I had with the movie was that I think this is the first one where the comedy, for the most part, doesn't work for me. When I say comedy, I mean the stuff that you see on Earth. The stuff between Thor and Loki I'm okay with. But just going for cheap stuff like having Stellan Skarsgård run around naked and Kat Dennings just unnecessarily being there.
I'm kind of actually on the opposite way around with most people. Like, I agree that she was unnecessary in the first movie, and in a way, yeah, unnecessary here too. But I don't know, she didn't annoy me as much this time as the first film. I mean, maybe it's just because of that line. So how's space? Maybe it's just that line. I don't know.
She gets better lines this time around, but I just felt. I think the movie would have worked better if they spent almost all of it on Asgard.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, okay, in the first film you introduce Asgard, but you also have to introduce him to Earth. So I thought it would have been smarter to say, why don't we do the whole thing in Asgard if we're going to explore all these different worlds? And for the most part, it is in Asgard. It's probably 70-30 on Asgard, and they don't return to Earth until the big climax, which, even though he's fighting a villain that holds no weight, I thought the way they shot it was well done, where they're going from portal to portal, basically.
Yep, and going for all the worlds.
But again, everything goes back. With superhero movies, most of them are only as good as their villains, and when you have a villain with no interesting qualities to him, it really hurts the overall movie. But also the plot in general, it's a really basic superhero movie where we have to stop them from taking over the world. And this was really this is the one where they introduce another one of the Infinity Stones. which is looks like red Kool-Aid for some reason.
Yep. Would you also agree that maybe this is the least connected of the series? Like, the only major thing that happens in this is, like, Loki is... Spoilers, obviously. After Loki supposedly dies, he comes back and is taking control of Asgard. That's pretty much all... The only major thing that happens in terms of...
Well, it kind of reminds me of Iron Man 2, where it's just we're trying to kill time. We just have to put another movie in this slot where, much like Iron Man 2, there's nothing of major significance outside of introducing an Infinity Stone and Loki taking over Asgard, presumably.
Yeah.
As far as positives, production design is still really good.
I'd say better than the first one, actually, because, I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, the visual look of Asgard compared to the first movie, I think looks much nicer.
Well, it looks more like it feels more explored. It's more expansive.
Yeah.
Because
I will say that. Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also think this film does improve on some, not all, issues of the first film. Like, I think one of the major issues with the first film is that, admittedly, the action sequences weren't that well shot, which I kind of think is just more just because of director Kenneth Branagh wasn't big on action. So you bring in a guy like Alan Taylor, who's worked on Game of Thrones, and you do get some better action.
I would agree with that. But on the flip side, I thought the Foster Thor relationship was weaker in this than it was in the first one.
Yeah.
Because she's pretty much a plot device for most of the movie. And it kind of goes back
just
to what
like,
I was...
she has the Aether in her, so we got to protect her from Malekith.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying about some of the female characters being really underwritten. And out of all the romances that they've done, this is the one that I've never bought into.
Yeah, it's definitely been the weakest, to be honest.
I mean, it doesn't... On paper, it's kind of like what you would expect from Lois and Superman. It's kind of got that same dynamic to it, but there's something about it that just feels off to me.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
So, me personally, I think it's the weakest because I think it's the most forgettable. And also, there's not, like we were saying, there's nothing of significance that really happens.
Yeah. As for me, like, it's not my least favorite of the whole franchise, but I will say weakest of Phase 2. Not the most connected, weakest villain of the series. But I will say the scenes with Thor and Loki together, that's the best part of the movie. Specifically when they're flying around Asgard, like, and Loki's being a backseat driver, is like, turn left, turn right, press this one. Like, we get it, Thor. We get it, Loki. You're backseat driving. It's not helping.
And they found a really clever way with the Chris Evans cameo.
Oh yeah, that was excellent.
And the mid-credits scene was a good introduction to what we would see later. Although I remember seeing...
I'll admit though, at first I was like, oh wait, this is Guardians of the Galaxy? Boy, that looks weird.
Well, did James Gunn direct that post-credits scene?
He directed it, and Alan Taylor was like, didn't want to have it in my movie, but they had it in.
Yeah, well, it does... Well, I'm trying to think. They gave him the Aether, right?
Yeah, they gave the Collective the Aether because the Tesseract was with them, and they can't have two Infinity Stones in one place, and that was it.
Okay. So, let's see. How by this point we've had the Tesseract, we've had the Aether, and we don't know the Scepter is a stone yet, right?
Yeah, at this point we don't.
Okay. So, I don't think it's a terrible movie. It's just for me, I don't see myself rewatching it anytime soon.
I feel ya. Like, it's not. Yeah, this actually, you know what? I gotta agree. This might actually is the least rewatchable of the series. Actually, now that I think about it.
Because even Iron Man 2, I could watch. I think the first half hour or 45 minutes of that movie is really strong.
Yeah, like, because as someone who actually, for a while, actually was a huge fan of the first Iron Man films, to the point where I actually liked the second film more for a short time. I was actually that film is more rewatchable to me than Thor 2.
So, that's our piece on Thor: The Dark World. But we'll move on to the third. What's funny is they did 3 sequels right in a row. The third one was Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which came out April of 2014, and unlike the previous 2 films, which had really inspired directors behind them, they announced that the Russo brothers, who were pretty much known for doing comedies, and not particularly good ones in my estimations, like Me, You, and Dupree, and some other things. But I have to freely admit, this goes to show that Marvel knows what they're doing when it comes to directors, because, wow.
especially when it comes to comedy directors. Like they actually do pretty damn good jobs. Like we'll see later with other films in this series.
So we got this, which it was subtitled "The Winter Soldier," which recalls probably, in my estimations, the best run on Captain America, which is Ed Brubaker's Winter Soldier run, which this borrows a lot from. But it's funny. I would say this is the darkest. Darkest is not the right word. I'd say this is the most grounded.
Yeah, the most serious. There's still a bit of comedy because this is Marvel, but it's more about the drama and stuff.
Because this one plays. It's, you look at the Phase 2. It's Iron Man 3 is a science fiction movie. Thor is fantasy. This is like a spy action thriller.
Inspired like 3 Days of the Condor and All the President's Men. They even has Robert Redford.
Yeah, so much so they brought Robert Redford in. I do agree with the consensus. I do think it is one of the best Marvel films.
I'd say the best solo film.
Okay, I'd agree on that. What makes it work is that this is a great example of taking source material but making it fit within your larger film universe. For one thing, I talked about female characters. This one, they actually give Black Widow a lot to do. They make her a much more interesting character. And then this is the one where this was a real game changer for Marvel in that they announced that Hydra has taken over S.H.I.E.L.D. and that Hydra is back. They were dormant, but they've secretly infiltrated within S.H.I.E.L.D. and that Robert Redford's character is their presumed leader.
Yeah.
And then they also connect the Winter Soldier through Hydra, kind of like they do in the comics.
And of course, the Winter Soldier is eventually revealed to be none other than Cap's old friend Bucky, who presumably died at the end of the first Avenger, but obviously he didn't.
I really don't want to criticize this movie because I really like it so much, but if I had one problem, I wish we got a little bit more of the Bucky-Steve friendship.
I actually do agree with that, actually. It's like, yeah, I mean, as badass as Winter Soldier is, he's actually probably the weakest link of the film because he's probably gets the least amount to do, probably, which I know is probably going to be very controversial to some fans, but yeah.
He's more a tool than anything. He's not a fleshed out character per se.
I will say that one of the coolest things about this film, I think this story is so well written. It manages to get away with having a real Loki-esque villain. I mean, you could kind of argue that Alexander Pierce is the main villain, but to me, the main villain of this film is just Hydra in general. They're the main villains.
No, I would agree with that. And also, the action is superb. That whole fight on the highway is fantastic. The character this again, like Iron Man 3, this one has a lot of character development in it where it's all about Cap coming to terms with how the world has changed and security. Should people be spying? Should they be spying for the greater good? How far can you go in order to still be in his mind, do the right thing? Black Widow coming into the film, and they also introduced Falcon in this movie. I don't know if in the comics, because I haven't read a lot of Falcon stuff, if he is I know he's a soldier, but I can't remember if he deals with Marines with military suffering from stress, and he works for wounded warriors pretty much.
Yeah. Well, either way, I will say Anthony Mackie is a great addition, and he has great camaraderie with Chris Evans. Of course, the film begins with them running, and Cap just goes, on your left, don't you say it, don't you say it, don't you say it, on your left, come on!
And speaking of other characters, this is the one where they really give Nick Fury something to do.
Yeah, I'd say Samuel Jackson is Nick Fury. And also, I'd argue the best performances in their roles for Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, I'd say that. If I do, I kind of wish they kept Nick Fury dead.
Yeah, this will lead to one of the big problems that some people have with the Marvel films is that you think they kill somebody, but surprise, they're alive.
There's only been one or two that bothered me. This is one just because I feel like it would have brought things to the next level. And for the most part, you think he's actually dead.
Yeah.
But I thought him surviving that whole accident and then the car flips over. It was a bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah, actually, I think it may be a bit stretched because you see him get shot, and it's like, and I don't know.
It's like, I'll let it slide because it's Sam Jackson. He's that badass, but
So yeah, that's kind of all I can say really about Captain America: Winter Soldier. It really is that amazing. Like,
yeah,
like one of my personal favorite film of Phase One was actually Captain America: The First Avenger, but I will agree this blew that out of the water. And I will say that as we were talking earlier, like the first two Phase Two films of 2013 were kind of they weren't received as well. Like this year, that 2014 though, Marvel really delivered with two of their most beloved films to date.
And again, post credit scene leads to events that we'd see later. Again, we also get another Peggy Carter's in the movie, just a cameo, but I think that scene works really well. It ties it back into the first one.
Yep.
And you also get the introduction of Sharon Carter and what's his name? Crossbones. Forget the actor's name.
Frank Grillo.
Oh, Frank Grillo, that's right. They also give I like Kobe Smulders a lot in this compared to what I did in Avengers.
After Avengers, she's thankfully been given much better material to work with in these later films.
So that's big hit for Marvel, critically and commercially. So 3 sequels in a row. Marvel threw a left when we thought we were getting it right. I remember when they announced their Phase 2 lineup, and I was like, okay, Captain America, Iron Man, Avengers, Ant-Man I knew was coming. Although they went back and forth on Phase 3, Phase 2. The big question mark was Guardians of the Galaxy.
As like the trailer famously points out, when Digimon Hunsu goes, who? That's pretty much everyone else's reaction when they first announced. It's like, wait, who are these people?
Even as a comic book reader, Guardians of the Galaxy was a B comic. Because
all I knew about it was that Rocket Raccoon was in like a Marvel vs. Capcom game, and that's all I heard about it when they first announced it. It's like, oh, okay, that's where he's from, but still, never heard these people before.
Because you have like your A-list, your Spider-Mans, your X-Men. Then you have B, like top B, like Captain America, Iron Man. A lot of the Avengers are top B, and then you have your bottom B, which is like Guardians of the Galaxy, Moon Knight, Iron Fist. A lot of those characters. So I have to admit, I was really skeptical when they announced this movie was coming out. But bringing in James Gunn to direct the movie, a guy who has a very unique style, very unique sense of humor, had not done anything space related,
or anything like big budgeted for that matter.
Yeah, like I think his highest budgeted movie was probably Slither, and that was made for like a couple $1 million.
Yeah, but this is another case of, I think, of a film where the director does get to have his full style on display. I mean, this is a Marvel movie that managed to get away with the lines. They got my dick message, and we have a black light. This looks like a Jackson Pollock painting.
It's kind of like what they did with Shane Black, where they did let him. They kind of gave him full control, which I think made sense considering the what they were trying to adapt. And then you look at the casting. For the most part, not actors you would associate. Because Bradley Cooper was the biggest name they had, and he's just doing the voice.
And then you have Vin Diesel, he's a tree.
And then Vin Diesel's a tree who only says 3 words. You get
the lead guy is Chris Pratt, who of course was mostly known for being one of the supporting characters in Parks and Rec. You have Zoe Saldana, who kind of gave, if you're talking like the human leads, probably the most famous, just because she's on Star Trek and Avatar, but still not a big name. And then for Drax, you got a wrestler, Dave Bautista.
And then, but they were also smart they rounded out the supporting cast with a lot of recognizable names like Glenn Close, John C. Reilly, Jaimin Hansoon, Karen Gillan for all you Battlestar Galactica fans,
Doctor Who,
and Doctor Who, of course. Yeah, they've gotten a lot of Doctor Who talent. They got Eccleston, they got Karen Gillan, now they got David Tennant on Jessica Jones.
Yep.
So I honestly didn't know what to expect with the movie. Trailers look good, but I still wasn't sure. Well, the movie comes out, big success in both ways. Big surprise success. I don't think anybody expected it to do as well as it did.
I mean, because it's Marvel, I think some people are expecting, it's going to do okay. but not 700 million. Okay.
Why do you think it did as well? I mean, aside from quality, why do you think it did so well as it did? Because people were just starting to get in that.
I think maybe it's just because that this was one that a lot of people really liked. Just it was a really popular one. That yeah, and of course maybe it's at this point this is the movie. This is the movie that proves that basically that Marvel can take risks. They can take a C-list superhero team and make a big movie about it, but also that they aren't afraid to take them.
I think a big reason why it succeeded was I think people just wanted something different.
Yeah,
And also, Star Wars is coming out. It's a big space movie. Haven't had one of those in a long time. Not named Star Trek.
yeah, it's pretty much like Star Wars mixed with Serenity, which is fitting because of course Joss Whedon also
Yeah,
works with Marvel.
yeah, Joss Whedon. I'm gonna let you go first because I know this movie holds a special place for you.
This is basically my favorite Marvel movie, MCU movie. And last when I did my top 12 films of 2014, I'll admit I kind of copped out by putting two films at number one. I'll admit this is my favorite film of 2014. Straight up, this is my number one. Like to me, this is first off, this is the funniest film. This is, in my opinion, the funniest MCU film in the series. Like, it has all these great quotable lines. Of course, some that you're probably expecting. How the hell did that get into a Marvel movie? But also, like, a great cast of leads. Like, admittedly, this film you have five main lead characters. You got Star Lord, you got Gamora, you got Drax, you got Rocket Raccoon, you got Groot. You got to introduce all these characters, get them together, and make sure they all get equal, and if anything, a nice balance of character development. And to me, I think they did. They did a nice job with it. Of course, they got the great cast to fill out these roles. You got Chris Pratt, like just basically being charming and yet also roguish. Biggest surprise for many was probably Dave Bautista as Drax, because the usual stigma is that wrestlers aren't that really good in movies, but here he just blows out of the water just by being the serious guy in this crazy situation. Who doesn't understand what metaphors are? And then, admittedly, Zoe said kind of gets the short end of the stick, which kind of correlates with what you were talking about earlier about the female characters not getting that much to do, but she still gets a few memorable lines here, like, I am going to die surrounded by the biggest idiots of the galaxy. And then later when she and Star-Lord talk about Footloose, he's like, I will not succumb to your pelvic sorcery. And then, of course, you got everyone's favorite characters, Rocket and Groot. They're great. They're both great. This movie makes you care about a tree and a raccoon.
Yeah. I was gonna say something, but I lost my train of thought. What I will say is I think it's the first Marvel movie that was a flat out comedy. I feel like that's what they pitched it as, and I think for the most part they succeeded. I do think it's very funny. I do think the camaraderie among the characters is great. I think it's one of my favorite ensembles because even the bit players like Michael Rooker, Glenn Close, John C. Reilly, they get enough to do. Benicio del Toro has a nice little role.
Like I do love Michael Rooker as Yondu. Like when in the scene where he's talking to Brooke, he's just like boo 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 boo.
And you even
and even his henchman, which was played by James Gunn's brother Sean, just cracked up because he was like.
They even had Rob Zombie has a little role. Seth Green in the post-credit scene. I still can't believe I waited all these years to get Howard the Duck in a Marvel movie.
It elicited a audible, oh my god, reaction from you when we went to go see this in theaters. I can tell you that, folks.
And even Lloyd Kaufman plays one of the inmates who most people will know as
and also Nathan Fillion,
the head of Trauma. Yeah, Nathan Fillion has a voice.
Yeah, like I said, Lloyd Kaufman, Trauma, who James Gunn worked with before in the past.
For a movie that's a comedy, though, they pulled the rug out from under us with the opening.
I will say that I'd argue that this is the one MCU film that probably has the most emotional depth to date. Like, yeah, of course, you open with an opening that you would not expect from a Marvel movie, especially a comedy with Star-Lord's mother dying, but then you have all the main characters almost having, as some people have been saying, the near-death experience. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, this movie, I'll admit, there are some tear-jerker moments in here for me. Near tear-jerking moments, I should say.
Yeah, well, I was surprised that they pulled that right out of the opening. I think it works. I think it gets you invested right away. So there's a lot of positives that I'll say about the movie. I don't. I put it, if I had to rank it, it's like right in the middle for me with Marvel, because I think it succeeds more often than not. But one of my pet peeves in movies is when you have like sci-fi movies where they're very out there and the characters are very funny. Why do the villains have to be so serious?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, and I like the hell's he? Is it Lee Pace? Is the guy's name?
Lee Pace.
Like, he does a really good job, but I would have liked to have made him a little bit closer to what he was in the books, where he's got more personality. Um, uh, Karen Gillan is just kind of there. She's just kind of windows.
First half, she's just not given anything to do.
She just she just sits there and takes orders. Jaimin Hansu
Yes,
pretty much.
I mean, she gets sideline favorite Gamora.
Yeah, and Jaimin Hansu pretty much. If you've seen Furious 7, he plays that exact role pretty much.
He does get who line.
He does get the who line. So.
But I'm actually kind of on the opposite side with the villains. Like, if I didn't, I agree they're still not by no means the best series villains. But if I was like, if I wasn't a big fan of the villains, this might not have actually been my favorite MCU film, because I do think Ronan's kind of a bit of an underrated villain, if only just because of the fact that he's the only one to, yes, not even Loki has done this, to have the balls to say "F you to Thanos." It's like, F you, I'm doing my own thing, even though obviously it backfires on him. You gotta give him credit. That takes balls. Even if, of course, Thanos has still not done anything except sit in that chair. It does,
but that's the reason why I don't think it means that much yet, because all Thanos has done is sit in a chair.
Good point.
So, I kind of wish that they would have made that mean something. Maybe if there was just a little bit more backstory of how the two of them got together. I do like how they actually gave Ronan motivation with the whole religious race thing about his people. So it's not like Malekith, where I just want to take over the world.
And he's also he's not like Malekith, who feels like he could have just been easily defeated in just one swoop. Like, yes, it does result in some fake out death scenes, two of them, but Ronan's kind of a tough son of a bitch for them to defeat, and it actually does result in probably my favorite climax, which is the goofiest climax, but still pretty awesome. Cuskin. Dance off rope.
I would actually say the climax was my least favorite part of the movie. Not the dance off, but it's kind of, I see this in blockbusters in general, where we're just gonna have the big light fight stage show at the end, where it's just spectacle.
That is kind of the thing with most of these movies. Admittedly, they mostly end with big action set piece protecting a city and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll admit that.
There is something coming up though where I appreciate they did something different, but here I thought they could have done something a little bit more clever, especially because the rest of the movie is so clever. If you look at the writing, and it's got really good pacing when the characters get together. It moves. There's little time wasted. So, I like it, but I don't love it. I do think there's more in it that I like than I don't. I just wish the villains were a little bit tighter and the ending was a little bit more investing.
Okay, I feel you. And like I said, this is my favorite MCU film to date. Even after the two that came after this, this is when I just love this film.
A lot of people do, and I'm glad this movie did really well. Good for James Gunn to get this kind of hit, because that means he could potentially get more projects like this. He is doing the sequel.
Yep, and he also has this little indie film he's doing called the Bell Call Experiment. I said that wrong. Bell Call Experiment, that's coming out I think next year. I think so. He still has his little films to work on.
So I would say that the most anticipated movie of Phase 2 was Age of Ultron. I think.
Yep. Because you bring back Joss Whedon, you bring back all the big guys. It's now time for them to kick some more ass.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, they've gotten together. Now what? And I remember I got really excited when I saw the trailers. And especially when they got James Spader to do Ultron. I was like, perfect choice. With that said, the movie came out. Of course, did really well. I mean, who the hell... Disney, you shouldn't be mad about $1.4 billion.
That I find ridiculous. We find $1.4 billion to be disappointing. I'm like, Shit, God, imagine if Star Wars doesn't do that well. Boy, that'll be a disaster.
And also, you know, I think they knew they were going to have a hard time following the first one because the first one was this big culmination of everything they'd done. And with Age of Ultron, you had another movie coming out right after that.
So as a result, basically, this is definitely one of those films where it's gotten good reviews, so most people liked it. But again, you have some people like, not as good as the original. Which, if you don't mind if I start things off, like,
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead.
I do agree. It's not as good as the original, but I'm not holding against the film that much because, again, sequels, you gotta expect that sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's one. This is why I always say manage expectations.
Yeah.
You know, because everything can look good on paper, but until you see the movie for yourself, you never know.
You never know.
With that said, I like Age of Ultron a lot. I think what's funny is that I think as a movie, it fixes a lot of the things that the first one kind of dropped the ball on, and this it's kind of vice versa. Where I thought the opening was fantastic, the first act is great, and then the third act is the weakest part of the movie. I think it's flipped with the first one.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this opens with a great opening with attacking Baron von Strucker's facility, and of course, you got that great team shot. I don't know about you, but I think this movie has like some of those fangasming moments of all time for any movie. Yeah. Maybe just.
I think they managed to outdo the spinning camera shot from the first one.
Yeah, definitely.
With that whole opening. So my biggest positive is that I think I don't agree with the criticism that there's too much. The only
people are coming from.
The only point I will concede to there's a little too much going on is that I think you could have cut the twins out of the movie and it wouldn't have changed it. At least Quicksilver, I should say.
Especially considering that Fox already did Quicksilver, and of course they did him really well in X-Men: Days of Future Past.
It's not that. It's that I think Quicksilver's death would have meant something. Again, spoilers.
Oh, and you know what? Yeah, that might be the thing. Is like, oh, he's in one movie, he's dead.
I think it would have meant. I think it would have meant. Sorry.
I'm sorry. To that credit, maybe Marvel realized, okay, Fox is doing their thing with Quicksilver. Maybe we'll let them do their thing, and we'll just. But then again, it kind of feels like maybe if they didn't bring it in, it makes you wonder like would they have killed off one of the main Avengers?
It looked like they were going to do that with Hawkeye, at least in my estimations, but they found a way to do it. But I was going to say, I think Quicksilver's death would have worked if he had a confrontation with Tony Stark.
Yeah, because again, it sets up that when they were younger, they survived a bombing on their house, and whose weapons were that? Tony Stark's. Which I also got to say connects pretty nicely to the first film because, of course, in that film, Tony quit making weapons when he realized that his weapons were being used against innocent.
Yeah, and so I kind of wish he had some sort of a confrontation with Tony Stark, especially after that great speech where he's like, "I waited 2 days for Tony Stark to kill me," but they never have any sort of not. I didn't want to see a fight per se, but I wanted to hear them have some kind of an exchange.
Yeah, because most of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver scenes would mostly come with Cap.
Yeah,
and of course Ultron.
Yeah, Cap and Ultron. So that kind of bugged me a little bit. So that was my big thing was that I felt like the twins, you could have cut them out of the movie and it wouldn't have changed it. Again, I thought the third act was a little much. I kind of get tired. This is not just Marvel. It's, like I said, blockbusters in general. I like climaxes when you can do something different other than just a big battle. Especially, it's kind of like the first one where they're fighting robots, pretty much, and there's not a lot of investment on my part because of that. And also, Nick Fury showing up, I thought that was kind of a betrayal of what they set up in Winter Soldier.
It does kind of make you wonder, where did he come from? Because again, he was off on his own, but it's like, oh, the Avengers are in trouble. Gotta help.
Exactly.
So I will say, when they bring bring him back in with the helicarrier, that's pretty cool because oh man, you kind of have to watch these Agents of Shield to learn where that came from. But it's just that's just me.
So those are really my only complaints. The last part and the twins.
I was actually going to say something about also them. You know the scene where they're recovering Vision's body from Ultron, and like I think it was Seoul. I think that's South Korea.
Oh, where they're chasing after the truck.
Yeah, I actually thought that was going to be part of the actual finale, but I guess not. Which then again, maybe the movie is just a tad bit overlong with that scene being the one that mainly drags out. But then again, I realized again you got to introduce Vision. So it's not like, oh yeah, we can introduce Vision in like 5 seconds, and boom, he's down. He's kicks his ass.
Well, there's that, but also I can't get mad at the action scenes because of how well thought out they are. There's a lot of action, but I like, with the exception of the final part, I think they're all well choreographed. Like there's the motorcycle fight, there's the Hulkbuster fight. There's
that part is hilarious.
That had my favorite laugh out loud moment when he punches him and he spits out blood.
It's the same. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I also like, you're super stronger than her. You're a Bruce Banner. Don't mention Puny Banner. Also, right in the back. Dick, move, Banner. Again, that was great. Of course, Vision was awesome. Like, it's cool that they brought in Paul Bettany after years of playing Jarvis. Like, he literally, all he does until before it was just coming in like one of the last days and just do his voiceover, but now he's like actually in the film. And of course, he has the epic scene where he just, out of nowhere, just goes, "Here's the hammer." He just picks it up like.
Yeah, he just picks up the hammer, no problem.
And everyone's just like, "Oh."
Although speaking of which, that whole scene with them trying to pick up the hammer it's really funny, especially when Cap picks up the hammer and it moves, and they cut to Thor. He's like, "Oh shit, I'm about to lose Asgard." If I was him, I would have stood up and just taken it away.
And then when Black Widow says like, "Oh, that's not a question I need answering," because even though I don't read the comics, I know that at one point she did actually manage to lift the hammer.
Yeah, she did manage to lift it.
Okay, now actually on that note, I do want to talk about, I think it's kind of a stupid controversy that was brewing about this film.
The misogyny.
Which was the budding romance between Black Widow and Hulk, because obviously that was basically like the big controversy surrounding this film. It may have something to do with Joss Whedon quitting Twitter. He said that that's not the reason, but I kind of think it is, because you got a lot of feminists calling him a hypocrite.
I have to call bull on this, because if you look at the first Avengers movie, Hulk and Black Widow have a lot of scenes together.
Exactly. I mean, maybe it's them falling in love was maybe a bit rushed, but it's not like didn't have any scenes together in the first one. That's one of my main things. Like, who was it that first approached Bruce in the first film, and who was it who was with him when he first transformed into the Hulk? Black Widow.
And also, they have something in common where they both have something to hide. They're kind of loners. They're both incomplete. She can't have children. Neither can he, as they made clear in the Edward Norton Hulk.
Yep. So yeah.
Again,
I didn't mind it that much. I can kind of see where people are coming from, but seriously, it's not that big of a deal for me. It's like, I don't get it.
It didn't. I had no issue with it. I also had no issue with spending good chunk of the movie at Hawkeye's home.
I like that just because it at least gave Hawkeye something to do, and also to his credit, Hawkeye does get some of the best lines of the movie. My favorite line is when Scarlet Witch is hypnotizing everyone. She's about to do Hawkeye. He's like, I tried the mind control thing. Not a fan.
I like when he's giving her that whole pep talk. He was like, the sky, we're going up in the sky, and I have a bow and arrow. This doesn't make any sense.
I have a bow and arrow. And also, after that, when Quicksilver runs away, and he's like, no one would know. Last time I saw Ultron was sitting on, quick little bastard. I missed him already.
Speaking of Ultron.
Okay, I was going to say, let's get to this, because this is another polarizing thing.
I can't hate it. It's James Spader.
I didn't mind that he was funny. I know some people are like, oh, he's too funny. And again, this is kind of another one of those.
It makes sense. He has the personality of Tony Stark.
And I know this is another one that was like, everyone thought he was going to be more intimidating, but I didn't mind. I mean, I thought he had some funny lines like, people create smaller people. Children, that's the word. I lost the word there. Also, when he cuts off Ulysses' claws on, do I look like Iron Man? I am not Tony Stark. Oh, I'm so sorry. That will probably grow back.
He also, when the Hulk is charging at him, you just hear, oh, for God's sake. So, and also, I think it's genius that because because he's part of Tony Stark's brain, he wants to create a world in his image. So that makes total sense. If I did have a problem with Ultron, it was that his motivations. I don't want to say rushed. It's that there were points where I thought it was inconsistent because it goes from I want to humanity needs to evolve to they're not evolving fast enough, so I'm gonna blow up the world and let metal take over. When wouldn't it have made more sense if he just let humanity destroy itself because that was something he was talking about?
Yeah,
But again, I kind of wish they kept Ultron alive. Maybe they will. Maybe there's a way they can do it.
possibility.
But it does have that great. The whole thing is that Ultron is more human than he thinks he is because he's afraid of death, and he talks about people create the things they dread. He winds up creating the thing that he fears, which is what will ultimately take care of him. And there's that great scene with him and Vision when Vision says, "Humans think that order and chaos are polar opposites," and the irony is that they're polar opposites, chaos and order, and he has to wind up killing him. So I thought that was pretty profound for a character who was only in the movie for about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Vision, I mean.
Vision.
And again, another criticism I heard. I think we should actually talk about Age of Ultron because this is the one that, even more than Iron Man 3, I think it's just almost a split. One of the things that I heard was that Tony's motivation for creating Ultron was really rushed. Between Iron Man 3 and that vision he saw, I don't think it was rushed. I thought it made logical sense.
Yeah, I agree too. It's like again, he has the vision that like all his fellow Avengers are defeated, like, and aliens are coming to attack Earth. So he must really realize. So has to realize, yeah, we're probably not the best thing to stop all this. So he has to he tries to create something that will do this, but ends up backfiring on him.
And his whole arc in these movies has been him cleaning up his own messes. But the fact that he does that is why we should admire him. Is that he's not afraid to correct his mistakes. And
Yes.
based on Civil War coming up, I think that's where we can see this evolve, which is really Tony Stark has been the character that's gone through the most throughout this whole universe. Let me check my notes. Oh, if I did have another problem, I thought there could have been a better way. I apologize, everyone. Sean and I seem to have disconnected momentarily.
I'm
So,
silly. Like I was saying before we cut off there for a second. Like everyone was thinking he's going to be the main villain, Iron Man of Civil War. Obviously, he won't be, but yeah, it makes more sense that have him try to be more accountable for his actions.
I just checked my notes. If I did have one more problem, I thought there could have been a more organic way to have Thor go off and do his own thing.
Yeah, if have you seen the deleted scene explaining that scene a bit more?
I've heard about it, but I also heard that Joss Whedon shot a scene where Thor is possessed by another character.
Ah, like that's the deleted scene you're talking about. Like when he's in the cave, he gets possessed by I forget the name. Like Norm something.
Oh yeah, Normsy, something like that. I know who you mean.
Yeah, like and I'll admit there are some deleted scenes in that when you look at the Blu-ray that probably should have gotten posted. Like there was one small scene with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch where they give a little more sound together, and then stuff like that. But aside from that, I see what you mean.
I understand they had to explain the scepter gem and kind of introduce Ragnarok, but I felt there could have been a better way because it's all of a sudden Thor just gets up and leaves. He's like, "Oh, see you guys."
I'm off to solve a mystery.
So I think that's about it for me. I don't.
And yeah, that's about the same for me too.
I don't agree. I don't agree that the humor was excessive. I just thought there was a couple lines that I would have taken out, but I thought it was considerably darker than the first one. I think it was I think the tone was appropriate
Yeah.
because for all we know, Civil War could be like Winter Soldier, where it's that tone. I think this is a good balance between the first Avengers and Winter Soldier. It's like a perfect medium.
Yeah.
So I do think it's an underrated movie. There's parts that I like more than the first one, but I think as a whole, I think the first one's just a overall stronger movie. But I think they're both pretty close.
I still prefer the first one, even though this one's probably more layered. But yeah, I agree. This film should have gotten just a little bit better reception than it did get. Like it's only got like a 70 or something around Tomatoes. It's like, yeah, come on, higher than that, at least an 80 or something.
As of this moment, it is at a 75.
Yeah. Anyway, of course, like I said, unfortunately, I think it got marred by some bad Black Widow controversy. Obviously over expectations, but yeah, it's still a Marvel movie. It's still a Joss Whedon Avengers film, so you're gonna get a lot of fun dialogue, great camaraderie with all the main cast members. So yeah, it's Marvel.
Yeah, it's not like the tone. I wasn't expecting him to go so far as the last part of Serenity, where it's like downright depressing. But so we got one more movie to talk about, which was originally going to be the start of Phase 3.
But and also the film that had to overcome probably the biggest hurdle that Marvel's ever gotten.
Well, aside from
like Guardians of the Galaxy, you have a character that's like Ant-Man, who's not exactly well known, but then you have to take off, and the director quit. Directors quit movies all the time. This happens, but that director happened to be Edgar Wright, who had been working on the film for like 8 years.
Longer than that.
So yeah, this definitely since the beginning of Phase 1.
Yeah, he was working on this around the time of Raimi's Spider-Man movies.
Yeah. So obviously when people say he had to leave, everyone's like, "Oh, this movie's gonna suck. You lost Edgar Wright." Yeah, that's just what happens when you get someone like Edgar Wright, and unfortunately you don't. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about what we want to see from Phase 3. Like clearly this is the creative committee of Marvel being like not agreeing with what he brought to the table, and so obviously he's like, nope, I can't do this.
If I had to read at it, I think the reason why he decided to leave was that he didn't want to make a movie that betrayed his vision, and also I don't think he wanted to make a movie that tied into the larger universe. I think he wanted to make something more like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's standalone.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed as any that he left, but if I would have rather had him leave on a good note than having him make something half-hearted. Because you look at Spider-Man 3, for instance. I like the movie a lot, but you can tell that Raimi's heart was not in parts of the movie.
Yeah.
So I think it was for both parties. For all you know, Edgar Wright, I'd say if DC wants to do Green Lantern, he's the guy to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because Flash.
We'll never know if Edgar Wright's version would have been any great, but again, Marvel moved on. They still cast a movie. They got another obscure. They got another out of left field choice to direct. There's Peyton Reed, who's mostly been directing for comedies, and probably because they like to Russo Brothers, ones that aren't exactly received so well.
Yeah.
But to his credit, he managed to, for the most part, I think he managed to overcome that big hurdle, because Ant-Man, again, another fun MCU film. To me, obviously, one of the great things about the MCU in general is that they've been bringing in a lot more obscure characters. Obviously, you need the main characters, but you can only go so far with them. So, of course, they have to bring in some different characters. And, of course, Ant-Man, you got someone who shrinks. And that produces, in my opinion, some of the most unique visuals and action sequences of the entire series. Namely, the big climax. Again, in Scott Lang's daughter's room, of course, you have Tom's the Tank Engine. It accidentally gets blown up the big size and just crashes out of the house. Surprisingly, doesn't kill anybody. And stuff like that. Just produces some really fun action sequences.
Yeah, especially what I was saying about the climax is I have to give Marvel credit for doing something so small scale, not just with a heist movie where it's not about the world ending, it's about them trying to steal dangerous technology, and then the big fight between the supervillain and the superhero ends in a girl's bedroom. And even that, it's on a smaller scale than that because they're miniature.
And at one point, which is probably my favorite movie time film, they're in the main villain's suitcase. The main villain's like, I will disintegrate you. And Siri, and his iPhone's in there, and Siri hears this and is like, playing Disintegration by The Cure. Which as it falls, just hear all that song, which is hilarious.
There's a couple moments like that where I feel like they found a way to replicate Wright's kind of humor. I think there's a couple points where they try and fail. Not fail. I just think there's points where they're trying too hard to be like Wright. Case in point for me.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Case in point for me, I thought Michael Pena went a little bit too far. I thought his scenes, they could have been cut a little bit, because I felt like they just said, all right, here's an outline, go.
I see what you mean. And me, I'm kind of like everyone else. I actually thought he stole the show. Like, he had some great moments, like whenever he has to talk about a lead, and you just see every character he's talking about just in his voice, like, of course, at the end, he even includes Stan Lee. It's great, stupid fun, right? Yeah, great, stupid fun. That part's good. Those scenes are kind of pretty funny. But again, I see what you mean.
So
I don't agree with I'm not entirely agree with the argument that he's like racist. It was a racist character. I mean, okay, I see where they're coming from, but he based it off of somebody he knew. So yeah. I don't accuse the film of that.
I wouldn't say racist. I just say excessive.
I see what you mean.
It's a little too much. The star of this movie, though, for me was Michael Douglas.
Yeah, Michael Douglas was excellent in this. Like he has my favorite line was in is like when Scott brings in all those guys and they get into arguments like, oh, you're in the system, and you just see Hank be like, yeah, we're doomed. Yeah. Oh, at the end, and when he sees Scott kissing Hope, into that, and yeah, that romance came out of nowhere. Literally came out of nowhere.
Yeah, literally. Scott, you're full of shit. He slams the door.
If that's the case, shoot me again.
But the de-aging on him at the beginning, I was like, oh my god, he looks like he just stepped out of Wall Street. Like, yeah, I want to see how they did. I want to see how they did that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was smart for them to go with Scott Lang over Hank Pym, because as from what I've read of Ant-Man, Hank Pym was a character who started out great, but then they took it too far where like he became schizophrenic, he beat his wife. So I think they were smart to choose the more heroic, more stoic kind of character with Scott Lang. Paul Rudd was really good.
I will give Paul Rudd credit also that he's probably he might be I'd say he's kind of one of the more relatable main protagonists, because he's not like a big superhero guy. He's just an average guy, you know. He gets in trouble, but he's trying to turn his life around, like and stuff like that, just so he can provide for his family.
Yeah, and again, another comedic known actor taking on a superhero role. I think it works for the best because the movie's pretty lighthearted. I think for the most part it succeeds at being funny, like the way him and Douglas play off each other. I think some of the jokes are really funny. Like the Baskin Robbins bit cracked me up.
Baskin Robbins always finds out. I really love the scene where he has to go acquire some piece of technology. You think it's just a Stark building, but of course, if you saw Age of Ultron, it's the new Avengers building. So of course, this leads to a conflict with Falcon, which I think is really fun sequence.
It's kind of unexpected.
Of course, it ends with him saying, "If no one tell Cap about this."
And a lot of the side characters I like I like that Bobby Cannavale, they gave him, he wasn't just the asshole boyfriend that I thought he was going to be. They have a good relationship towards the end of the movie.
Yep.
I liked even like T.I. as one of his heist buddies.
Just relax.
With the van.
We broke into this old man's house. Technically, I let you break in. So technically, you let you break in.
And as a heist movie, I think it works. Like the way that they shoot him breaking into Pym's house, into the vault, and then trying to steal the Yellow Jacket suit. I think as a heist movie, I think it works.
You ever hear about the Titanic? Yeah, killed DiCaprio. Anyway,
as a superhero,
it did really well with the heist elements.
As a superhero movie, though, I think it's a little too paint by numbers.
I see what you mean there.
And I think Corey Stoll is a great actor. I really do. but I wish they wrote a better character for him to play.
If you know, if you follow me on my blog, you know I usually defend most of the MCU villains, and this time I will concur. Yeah, one note, which is sad, but I will give Corey still credit that at least he has some moments where he gets to shine, like when Hank punches him, he's like, wow, I thought I was gonna get something like weak and nimble. I mean, it didn't do jack shit, but that was my favorite.
He's pretty much just the evil businessman that you'd see in like Captain Planet or those '80s cartoons.
Yeah.
Although, the Yellow Jacket concept, I thought they found a way to make that work, because that's just another Hank Pym suit in the comics. They actually made it its own thing. Like you said, the romance came out of completely left field.
Literally, it's like throughout the movie they're just arguing, and then at the end, boom, they're together.
It's like, my whole thing is, if there's no reason for it, don't do it. Try to think. Just, I kind of. What am I trying to say? Because I've only seen it once, so I'm still trying to remember what I thought about it. I remember liking it. I thought it was a little too paint by numbers for my taste.
I was actually gonna say, what did you think about Evangeline Lilly in the film? Because her role kind of got a bit of a was kind of another polarizing. Like, I guess it could kind of go on what you said about the female characters not being given much, but with me, I thought she was actually really good in the film, and she doesn't get involved with the action much, but I think what they did with her in terms of the plot was actually really good, because it clearly established at the beginning, like, she could just put on the Ant-Man suit, just do the whole thing, boom, it could just be over. But you learn why Hank doesn't want to do it, and the scene in which he reveals that, I actually got to admit, I actually got a little emotional during that scene. It's like, oh damn, that was actually handled really well, which of course explains what happened to Janet the Wasp,
who is remaining anonymous.
I mean, yeah, I think that was a really touching scene between the two, even if Scott ruins the moment. I do love him realizing that, like, I just ruined the moment, didn't I? Yes, you did. I'm gonna go get some coffee. Still, I think the scene before that that's a really touching scene between the two.
It is, and like, I think if you look at the three acts, they feel like they come out of different movies for me. Just in the sense that the first third, sets everything up. It's kind of second act is the big training montage, and then the third act is a heist. And to me, there's parts of it that feel like they were directed by different people. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But like I said, the third act I think really saves the movie.
Yep.
I think it's fun. I think it's amusing, but I can't see myself going back to it repeatedly.
I see.
And again,
I'm just glad this movie managed to get over most of that hurdle with the Edgar Wright situation. Like, yeah, you can still feel a bit of his presence there, and of course we'll never know. It's disappointing that he couldn't do his movie, but for what it's worth, they managed to make Ant-Man work.
Yeah, we're never gonna see it, so there's no point in talking about it anymore.
Yep.
I'm fine with what we got. I wanted more, like most people, but I'm not gonna. You move on, like Marvel's been able to do. So it's just weird as a movie to end Phase 2 on.
Yeah, especially after just a few months earlier you had the Avengers.
I think there could have been a way where they made it flip, but take the post-credit scene from this and put it at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And again, I think Ant-Man is kind of like Hulk, where he works better in an ensemble piece, because he was a core Avenger for the very first run.
Yeah.
So that wraps up Phase 2. So just real quick, would you consider Daredevil part of Phase 2?
I consider basically all the TV shows that have come out from Marvel that they're all Phase 2 because. But again, Daredevil, I can see where you're coming from. That probably more than most would be Phase 2 because they may be appear in a film. We never know.
I'd actually like to see if they do bring Daredevil into a movie, team him up with Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Like, because yeah, for Spider-Man, bring in like all those guys as defenders. So we don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. What of all the Phase 3 movies, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Um, hmm. I think maybe Thor Ragnarok. Maybe just it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. Especially now that they had brought in the Hulk to bring him in. It'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
Yeah, you took my answer. Especially, I think it could be like Iron Man 3, where it's the best of the Thor movies.
Yeah, especially considering that neither of those two first films were particularly neither of those films are fan favorites.
Yeah, and especially you're gonna give Hulk another appearance that's not in an Avengers movie.
Yep.
Uh, I'm looking at the slate. I'm gonna see all these movies, but for me personally, the one that I'm not least excited about, but the one that I'm not super hyped about would be assuming Inhumans gets made, because there's been talk about it not happening. Just because I've read a couple issues of that comic, I've never liked it, and it's
Yeah, I mean,
and it's too much for me, like X-Men.
yeah, I mean they brought it into Agents of Shield, so we'll see how long that goes. I mean, if they brought him in for that, it'd be kind of weird to them to just like, oh, nope, we're not doing an Inhumans movie. But again, we'll see. That's probably my least favorite anticipated too, just because I don't really know that much, and this is coming from a guy who actually watches Agents of Shield, so I don't know that much about the Inhumans, so we'll just see.
And haven't they also announced that there's going to be Ant-Man and Wasp as part of Phase 2?
Yep, they just announced that.
Okay, so that's going to be in between Avengers movies, along with Captain
Yep.
Marvel.
Let's see.
So we got Civil War, which should be great. Doctor Strange, which could be, I think that could be something really different for Marvel, in that it could be the first time we really see magic.
Yeah.
And sorcery.
That one will be interesting to see just because what they do with it.
Yeah, because they could do. I always thought, Scott Derrickson is an inspired choice, but I always thought that screams Guillermo del Toro, or
Yep.
even someone like Peter Jackson. And Cumberbatch is a good choice. He fits the part. And I'll see anything with Tilda Swinton in it. So we got Guardians of the Galaxy 2. We have the untitled Spider-Man movie. All we know is that Tom Holland's going to be Spider-Man, and it's not a reboot, thank God.
I mean, they've already done that, so like, which is be like, but still, this is kind of like the second straight time they have to redo the series.
Just
literally
if I have to see Uncle Ben get shot again, so help me God.
He comes in like, don't kill me this time, please.
Because I felt the same thing. I was like, I love this Batman Superman trailer, but I have to watch Bruce Wayne's parents get shot again. Good God.
It looks like it probably will, so what are you going to do?
It's just, it's one of those things about superhero origins. There's certain things we don't need to see.
Yeah, I see. I mean, especially if you're doing a character, like bringing back a character we as an audience technically have seen before just a few years ago.
Yeah. Ragnarok, Black Panther. We have an actor. We just not much else, and we have Andy Serkis.
It may, from what I hear, of course you probably heard they want to get F. Gary Gray, but he's going to be working on Furious 8. So, from what I hear, it may be the guy who's maybe Ryan Coogler who did Fruitvale Station and Creed.
Yeah.
Which I actually got to admit, it was actually kind of my choice. Like at this point, it's like I can't really think of anyone else. Get Ryan Coogler.
I do, but I also think I don't think race should matter when it comes to do a director. You get the best guy for the job.
Yes, just get the best guy. I agree. Just get the best guy for the job.
So then we got the Russos doing Avengers, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, and Inhumans. So we got the next, 4 years covered. As far as things that, real quick, just one thing I'd like to see is that I think we're going to see the death of a core Avenger. I feel like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just based on contracts alone. Or that could be the cliffhanger for Infinity War.
Yeah.
Who do you think it's going to be, though? If you had to guess.
I know he's slated to appear in this, but I'm kind of thinking Cap might die in Civil War.
And then Bucky gets the mantle.
Well, in the comics, it's Falcon, so
Well, it makes sense considering Crossbones is the one who does it, along with Sharon Carter, who's brainwashed by Red Skull, which would be a good way to bring him back.
the thing is, though, like I know that ending was very controversial with fans, so who knows? Like, will the Russo brothers work with that, or are they gonna change anything? We'll just have to see.
There's always ways to improve on the material if you need to. It also begs the question: will they bring in Daredevil at some point? I think there's a couple places where I could see them doing it. I think Spider-Man would be the place to do it. Even if you just bring in Kingpin, bring Fisk in.
Yeah, just bring either of those in, and I'll be like, what do I mean?
Because he's known as much as a Spider-Man villain as he is as a Daredevil villain.
Yeah.
Will we see a new Thor? Do you think?
In the comics, as everybody knows, we have that's Jane Foster. Thing is, though, from what I've heard so far, Natalie Portman may not be back for Thor Ragnarok, so it begs the question. Does beg the question.
And another person is Beta Ray Bill, who's an Asgardian who gets the hammer. So I could see that because it's one of those things where contracts and also age. Downey's going to be in his mid-50s by the time Infinity War comes around, but at the same time, I think Tony Stark, it doesn't matter age because of the suit. It's kind of why with Batman Beyond they could have pushed Batman well into his 60s. But my advice: don't recast unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Because I think Downey, no one's going to be able to step in that without doing something entirely different. What I heard is that the kid from Iron Man 3 will eventually get the suit. I don't know how, but that's what I heard. Yeah, because that kid's got some growing up to do, first of all.
Yep.
So,
as for me, going back to what you were saying about what I like to see, like, one of the things I'm kind of... If you folks have probably heard somewhere in the news recently that Kevin Feige has recently announced that he doesn't have to report to Marvel CEO Ike Perlmutter anymore, or the creative committee, which I think is really good because, from all accounts, it looks like they were to blame for some of the MCU's biggest controversies, like the right situation, the arguments with directors like Alan Taylor and Joss Whedon, and apparently from what I hear, like it was because of Ike Perlmutter that it's caused all the controversy with the Black Widow merchandising for Age of Ultron. So, yeah, from looks of it, he may be able to, at the very least, the directors get to express their vision a lot more. And they are going with some interesting names. Actually, the only one I think the only one they've announced so far is the guy for Thor.
And John Watts will be doing Spider-Man.
And him. Possibly Ryan Coogler for Black Panther. We don't know. Whoever they get to do Captain Marvel.
And also, if Peyton Reed doesn't come back for Ant-Man and Wasp, which that's what it's leaning towards.
He is.
Okay. And then again, also like Captain Marvel with Black Panther, gender shouldn't matter. Just get the right director.
Yep.
And like I said, the Ragnarok choice really intrigues me. I mean, I love Flight of the Conchords, and What We Do in the Shadows is one of the funniest movies I've seen in God knows how long. So, that choice interests me the most of all the new directors. And then one more thing. I lost it. Oh, now that they have rights to Spider-Man, I think now is the time to introduce Norman Osborn. Because he plays a big part in the Avengers comics. He takes over S.H.I.E.L.D. at one point. So that I think now that they have those pieces, they can start to put them in place. In a perfect world, you'd like to see Doctor Doom at some point. You'd like to see Galactus. Especially now that they've gone cosmic, I feel like the absence of Galactus really hurts them.
Yep.
Hopefully Thanos can fill that void.
For now.
Yeah, for now. I think that's actually a good place to leave. Thank you, Sean, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope we can continue to do this in the future. I'll keep you posted on new topics. But I think this has been a really good first episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will get back to everyone about future plans in the upcoming days. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.